Hello again. It's Monica from Life is Art, and this is our Friday afternoon 3:30 demo at the What's Cooking online crop. And I'm just getting my other device set up here so I can see when you comment. Awesome. So as you're popping on, just say hello and howdy so I know you're here. And so the theme of our demo today is stamps and stencils and scissors. Oh my! All the best things in a craft room. The stamps and the stencils and the scissors. And let me just bring in my other light a little bit. Brighten up the table here. And so how are you doing this afternoon? The people who were gathered over in the craft and chat this afternoon, we were having a nice time visiting and getting some crafting done, so that was lovely. So if you're ever looking to join in with the craft and chat, just click on the link when it's posted in the afternoon from 1 till 3 and also in the evening from 7 till 9, and come say hello and do some crafting and chatting. And all right, so yesterday when we did our little demo, I was showing you some things and using our standard size cards, which are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And so today I'm going to show you something that's kind of new to us at Close to My Heart, which is our slimline cards, which is kind of fun. And so you can get the standard cards, you can get slim lines, and the slim lines give you a card. Now, I checked earlier, but I'm going to measure again. They give you a card that's 3 1/2 by 8 1/2 inches when it's all made. And again, it's scored in the middle, just like our regular cards. So you have a bump side and a dip side. And so when we want to use this, we're going to use the bump side to the inside. And sometimes when you're folding, even on a pre-scored card, you just want to make sure that your edge is lined up and then crease down the score line just like that. And you end up with a nice edge. You can use your bone folder to give it a little extra crispness. But I really like this shape of card when you're doing something that you either need a lot of width or a lot of height. And so it's just kind of fun. It's a little bit different. So I'm going to be working with my card on the landscape position, and I'm going to bring in a stencil. And we have these fun stencils that are 12 by 12, and you can tell this would be easy to see because mine's dirty. Despite cleaning it when I use it, I get it dirty because I've got Versamark ink on here, and I've got texture paste, and I've got ink, and I've got spray, and I've got, and there's some of those products that, despite your best efforts, do not clean off that well. But this one is from the stencil pack number 3, and it's actually been divided kind of into 9 sections, and then each section is a different pattern, which is really kind of fun. But we also have the rest of them are mainly like one pattern over the whole 12 by 12 inch stencil. And using a 12 by 12 inch stencil is kind of unique, I think, to Close to My Heart, because a lot of times you get ones that are like 5 by 7 or 6 by 6. So it's nice to have that large surface area that you can use. You can lay it on an entire layout, and that's fun. So I'm going to be doing some stenciling on my card here to start. And I'm going to use this sort of diamond checkerboard pattern here. And I'm going to be using a mini ink blending tool with foam on it. And just my plain black ink. This is actually intense black, which is good if you're doing anything wet or messy on top of it, because it doesn't bleed and run like other inks sometimes do. And because it's solvent based, so the water doesn't bother it. So if you're planning on using a marker or a water brush or shimmer brush or anything, you don't have to worry about it making a mess. So I'm just going to open this up, and I'm going to line up my stencil how I want it on my page. And I am just going to start inking. And so it's nice if you have your design going off the edge of your card. And I'm just going to hold it with my hand and work my way along with the inking here. And so just start in the corner, and I'm not inking the whole card, and I'm going to kind of put more ink towards the bottom and then have it fade as it goes up. So I'm starting here, I'm just applying in a circular motion, and I switch directions and I go both, clockwise and counterclockwise just to help the ink spread. And you kind of have to hold it down a little bit and just keep working and fill in the ink. And like I said, I'm applying starting at the bottom edge and working my way up. You want to make sure that you have your foam in motion when you touch the paper, and that way you don't end up with a big circle, the shape of your dauber. And so then I'm just going to move it along, and I can line it up again with the part that's already been inked. Sorry, I'm not paying very good attention. Hey, Mom, nice to see you're watching. If you're popping on, just say hello so I know who's here. And I'm kind of holding through my stencil a little bit, but up above where I'm inking, and that helps me be able to keep the card from underneath from moving around. And I'm working on top of my all-purpose mat, because if I have ink that goes off the edge of my paper, I can just easily wipe it up with a cloth. And I'm not getting ink on my tabletop, which is a good thing. Especially this ink, because, as I say, it's not water-based, so you would need to clean it a little more carefully. And let's move it along again, just like that, lining it up. And hold it down. And you can see that this is creating, on the part that we've done there, a really nice sort of gradient checkerboard pattern. For those who are watching, have you done much stenciling? Have you used any of the close to my heart ones? I'm really in love with the big mandala stencil. It's gorgeous. And the really big floral one, it's also, I mean, they're all lovely, but those ones are especially lovely in my opinion. And then of course you just wipe it off with diaper wipe, or I use my stamp chamois just to wipe it off. So I'll just set that aside for now and close up my ink, take my foam away, and I'm going to just pick this up so you can have a look at what I've done there. So you can see we've got more ink and then less as we go up, and I've done about half of the card. And you will see why I've done it that way in a minute. I'm just going to use my stamp chamois to get rid of that excess ink. And I'm going to bring in my Versamat. There's a little less glare with the Versamat, so you don't have to stare at the shine that's happening. All right, so now that we've got that, we've done our stencil bit, because we said it was going to be stamps and stencils and scissors. So that was our stenciling bit, and that fun stencil was from stencil pack number 3. And now we've got our stamps, and the stamps that I'm using today is this cute kitchen gnome stamp set. I think these little gnomes are just the sweetest thing. There's this little guy here with a little covered dish and a little steamy bit coming out there, and this little girl with her braids, and she's got a little saying here on her apron, says boss of the sauce. And then this little guy with his beard hanging down and his whisk, it says love food. And then there's little sayings, and of course I haven't lined them up very well when I put them back, but it says whisking you a happy day, just a little gnome cooking, I need you to gnome, and you're super. And then there's a little spoon and a little bowl and salt, and then there's this little stamp that we used when we did our distressing video this morning. That's where this stamp came from. And so I am going to show you what I like to do with these kinds of stamps. So I'm going to use this little guy here with his whisk as an example. And when you're taking stamps off of your carrier sheet, you want to be gentle and just peel, especially because these are fairly new. They've only been used a couple times. So you don't want to be too rough when you're taking stamps off of your carrier sheet or off of your stamp pad or your stamping block. So let me just grab the stamping block that's closest to the size and get him all ready to go there. And then I'm going to move these aside. And now you can absolutely stamp this and leave it black and white. You can stamp it and you can watercolor paint it. You can color it with markers. You can use watercolor pencils. So many things that you can do creating with this stamp. But one thing that I absolutely love, and we were talking about this, I'm going to set this aside. We were talking about this earlier during the craft and chat, is that I like to do paper piecing with my stamps. So if you have never done this, I am going to show you how I do it. So I'm just using my black ink. It doesn't have to be intense black. That's just what I have on hand. And the first thing that I do is I need the base for what I'm making. So I'm just going to grab my white daisy cardstock. I'm going to ink up my stamp. Make sure I got a good coverage. I need to re-ink my stamp pad. It's been a few years. And then I'm going to stamp my little gnome. But I'm actually going to stamp him twice. If you've ever done paper toll, this is a very similar process. You're going to end up with layers. So Robin, you've done stenciling before? That's awesome. Stenciling is so fun, and it can create such a dramatic effect. And I think it's very cool. So that's the first thing I need to do, is I need to stamp 2 versions of my little guy, and you'll see why eventually. And then the next thing I need to do, if you look at our stamp, he's got a nice little chef's jacket or something here, and his beard is also there, and his hat is there. So I am going to stamp his hat first. And for that, I've decided to use this bright, cheerful, candy apple red cardstock. And I'm bringing in the scrap paper that I always like to have on hand. You can tell I've been using it. I've been making a mess on it. But this way I can cover certain areas that I'm not going to need. So in this case, I only want his hat. So I'm going to cover my foam here so that I don't get too much ink on it. And I'm just going to ink up his hat and stamp it here on the red, just like that. Whoops. So there's our little guy's hat, and we'll set that aside. And then the next thing I want to stamp is his beard. And one way that I have discovered that's really fun to stamp anything that's textural like hair or beard is to use wood grain paper. So I have just this little snippet of wood grain paper from our wood grain paper collection. Sorry, just taking a sip of water there. And I'm going to stamp his beard onto that. So I'm going to cover up here, and I'll ink up his beard. Pardon me. Got a tickle in my throat. And I'll just stamp his beard right on the wood grain like that. And you may not be able to see it too clearly right now, but it'll look good when we're done. Pardon me. Ooh, tickles. And then we also have his little coat that he's wearing. So remember yesterday when we were doing the PML cards, making greeting cards out of them, I had this bit of red that I trimmed the scallop borders off of. And so I'm going to use this nice brown color that's on the back side to stamp his little coat. So Let me see, I'll turn it around this way. And I'll cover up my foam again. And then I can just stamp it right on there like that. Just like that. This is why I don't throw away those little bits when I chop up my PML cards. All right, so I think that's about all the inking we need to do. So I'll set that aside, set the foam aside, and now comes the scissors part of the equation. Now you can buy these gnome stamps with the thin cuts, but of course I like my scissors. So I did not buy the thin cuts. I just bought the stamp. Right now we're having our Stamptacular sale, and we were actually checking during the craft and chat time, and this particular stamp set is included in that sale. So if you really like this stamp set, it's on sale right now. Woohoo! All right, so now I'm just fussy cutting around his little stamp body. And you'll notice as I'm fussy cutting, I'm leaving a white ring around him. And that's the same as it would be if we were die cutting it. There's always a border of white. And that looks really nice when you're all done. And so when I fussy cut, I always start at the base of the scissors where the hinge is. And I move up to about the center of the blade. And then I start again. I don't go all the way to the tip. The other thing that you'll see is that I don't move my scissors. I open and close them, but I pivot the paper around. And I find that when you pivot the paper, you end up with a much nicer, much smoother cut than if you move your scissors. Okay, so you just go all the way around, and it takes a little bit of practice, I think, to learn that technique, but it's worth it if you want to do this kind of fussy cutting. The other thing that I crazily do is I cut out interior bits using a craft knife. So I just do it like I do with my scissors. I just go around, leaving that halo of white around like that. And then come along the other side. You want to make sure you have a nice sharp craft knife to do this kind of thing. If it's dull, then it's just a pain. And then you have the interior cut out as well. Just easy peasy. Of course, I say easy. Other people say, ooh, never, I'm never doing fussy cutting, because it takes a bit of practice. Okay, now we're going to start building from the bottom up. Okay, so the first thing that we need to have on here is his coat. So we've got his coat here, and I'm just going to cut right across like that. It doesn't matter that his beard is on there because we're putting his beard on later, okay? But what I want to do, I want to then trim. Now this is opposite what I said before. I want to trim right on the line, like just so the line is showing, but the paper on the outside is not. And you notice I cut right through his hand. And again, that's okay because we're going to put a new hand on him. So I'm trimming so that I still have the stamped line attached. Sometimes when I do this, I don't. But in this case, with this little guy, his line is staying on the piece. So I'm just going all the way around. And that time I did cut off his little hand because when we attach his little coat here, you will see that his little hand is still there. And I'm not worried about it. This one, because he's holding the whisk in his hand, we're going to add that hand back on again. So let's grab our liquid glue, because I find liquid glue is the easiest for this. And let's add glue where his coat's going to go. And we'll just stick that right on there, just like that. Easy peasy. And then the next layer we want is his beard, because his beard's going to go on top of this. So this is another instance where we're going to cut the outside line. Okay, So we're going to start at the top of his beard, and we're going to cut outside the line, but right up tight to it. So this is where you have to practice, because when you leave the halo around, it makes it a little bit easier because you have a little bit of play, a little bit of wiggle room. But when you're cutting right on the line, you don't have as much wiggle room. My daughter loves fussy cutting things. I think she's probably better at it than I am. Which seems weird, but she is. All right, and I'm not worrying about his nose, and I have gone above because we're still adding his hat. Okay, so it's nice to have that little bit left over there so that the next item sits on top of it, because we're kind of building things forward. So let's add some glue here where his beard's gonna go. Just like that. And glue that down. And because we've got our stamped image behind, we know exactly where the piece has to line up. Awesome. All right, Carol says she lost me, but I guess she found me. And now we have our chef's hat. So I'm just going to roughly cut it out first, and then I'm going to fussy cut it. So again, I'm cutting just outside the line all the way around. I think we're actually going to do that for everything. There are occasions where I cut inside the line, but I think on this guy, it's all outside the line. So we'll just keep cutting, trim, 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 all the way around. And if you go a little bit inside the line, it's okay, because that line is stamped on the background too. So the line will be there even if you cut it a little bit thin. You just don't want to have too much of the white inside showing. And then we'll trim off underneath the hat like that. And there we go. We've got his little hat. So let's stick that on. I love that it says love food. He's got like a little emblem on his hat. It says love food. It's so cute. So now there's a couple more details that we need to do. I know this looks like it takes a long time, but it's kind of fun. You wouldn't do this every time, but you know what? Even coloring him in, that takes time and effort. So when people get a card or something that you have taken time and effort to make, you know, they appreciate the time and effort you've put into it. So now I'm going to cut his little nose here, because we need his little nose. And at this time, I'm actually going to cut inside the line. So here I'm cutting inside the line of the hat, because we've got his hat here. And then I will cut outside the line at the bottom of his nose. And I'm actually going to cut some of this off to make my life easier. So we're cutting the outside of the line now, so that we have the outline of his nose over top of where his beard is. So there's the instance where we cut part of it inside the line and part of it outside the line. And then we can stick his little gnomey nose down right there. And I was telling the ladies on the craft and chat that all my little gnomes looked like they were anemic, like they'd been living in a cave because they were so pale. So we'll fix that. I'll show you in a minute what we're going to do to fix that. And let's trim this little hand that's holding the whisk. And we don't have to do anything with the whisk. You could if you wanted to. If you wanted to add a little bit of a metallic glint to that whisk, add a little sparkle to it, like he's been mixing up some icing. Anything like that you wanted. You could put a little gob of texture paste on there to look like he'd been whipping up something delicious. And let's add his little hand on there. Just like that. Now, I got to make sure I got it going the right way. I think it goes this way. Sometimes that's the hard part, is figuring out which way it goes. So there we go. We've got his little hand. And it's nice to add that layer, because then it brings it forward, because his hand is in front of him, which is in front of his coat, you know, there's layers. So that's the basis for this whole little guy here, now all put together. And we've got a bunch of little layers, which makes him look a little bit more dimensional. And then what we're going to do to make him not look like he hasn't seen the sun for years, we're going to take our watercolor pencil and just give a little scribble on a scrap piece of paper so that we have a nice flat edge to work with. And then we're going to just start lightly, and we're going to start coloring his nose here. And you want to put a little bit darker at the bottom of his nose, like that, and then a little bit darker under the brim of his little chef's hat, just like that. Give him a little bit of color so he doesn't look so sad. And we'll give him a little bit of color on his hand down there, and this little hand here, I got to be careful because I just freshly glued it. I don't want to move it around too much. So we'll give him a little bit of color there, and I could even come in with my water brush and add some water and give it that watercolored look. But I'm just going to leave it like that because he looks a little, I don't know if you can see it in the camera. He looks a little better now. Not quite so stark white, and he looked a bit like a vampire when he was too pale. All right. So now let's bring in our cute little slimline card that we've got here. We've got our little guy. And of course, I couldn't have him all by himself. So earlier, I made this cute little girl, and again, I paper pieced her. I used the a little snippet of the pattern paper from the Eat, Play, Love collection that has these little cherries on it. And then I also used some almond colored cardstock for her hair, and I used some of the Lagoon cardstock for her chef's hat and colored her in a little bit. And then we've also got this fantastic little guy here. And so I pieced him. I used red, candy apple red for his chef's shirt. And I used a little snippet of the floral PML card for his scarf. And then I used some lighter colored wood grain for his mustache. And some of the lemonade cardstock for his hat. And then I used a metallic, close to my heart, metallic marker to color in his little chef's plate there. And that was an idea that Carol gave me when we were crafting this afternoon. I thought, I need something to make it look metally. And she said, what about a marker? Sure. Wouldn't that be smart? So I've put a little bit of foam tape on the back of this little dude here. And so I'm just going to peel off the backing because he's in the middle. He's got his, the finished product under his, reveal plate here. And so we're going to stick him in the middle. And then he's got his little sous chefs here off to the side. So we're going to add some adhesive to those and stick them down. I love how colorful this becomes. Even though our background is just black and white, kind of like the checkerboard tile floor look, it really adds a lot of color when these guys are so bright. It really makes them stand out as the central focus. Even though we've done this beautiful stenciling in the background, it's the background. And it's allowing us to focus on these cute little kitchen gnomes. I think they're just so cute. All right, so let's stick this little guy here. We'll give him a little bit more room because he's got a whisk and the other guy's got his plate. But then we've also got to jazz it up a little bit. We can't just leave it plain. And so as part of the collection with Eat, Play, Love, there's this set of wood shapes. And let me just dump them out because you have to see these. They're just so cute. All these cute little wood shapes, and they're laser cut, but they also did some decoration on them. So there's this cute little mixer, and it's, electric mixer, and then there's this little handheld mixer. There's oven mitts, and this one's got a little heart in it. So they've added some really cute details. Even the chopping board or cheese board has cute little details to it. The little teapot. How sweet are they? And there's a little covered dish and a bowl and a rolling pin and a whisk and a pepper grinder, a little spatula, all of these cute little, there's the salt that goes with the pepper, some little flowers and some little hearts. So I've picked out, to embellish our card, I've picked out 3 of the little wooden hearts. So let's just scooch these all off to the side. And we're going to add some of these little hearts to our page. Grab my adhesive. And I probably should be using my liquid glass for this. I may have to reattach these with liquid glass after. So I'm going to add 1 little heart over here. And then instead of using the stamp that has the little steamy bit on top of this little covered plate, I'm going to use the little hearts to act as steam, which I thought was a cute little touch. So let's just stick a couple of little hearts kind of steaming up, because everything's better when it's made with love. And there we have it. How cute is this little card? Just with a little bit of stamping, a little bit of stenciling, and a little bit of scissors. And I think it's just darling and cute. And if you sent that to somebody, I think they would be really pleased to receive a card made by you that looks like that. How cute! Stamping, stenciling, and scissors. Oh my. And the Eat, Play, Love collection. How awesome. All right, so I hope you guys have a great afternoon and keep working away at those challenges and check out all the games. There'll be another one posted a little later. And then at 7 to 9 tonight, we'll also be having our craft and chat time. So I hope to see you there. All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye.